5 o'clock.
As we await the publication online of his defamation lawsuit against Dow Jones and News Corp, who own the Wall Street Journal, we have now seen a new filing in the Southern District of New York where Jeffrey Epstein was indicted. That filing was made by one person alone, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, who has moved for the unsealing of the grand jury transcripts in that case. Contrary to some of their public statements, they are not seeking just certain grand jury transcripts. They are seeking all of them, albeit with appropriate redactions, they say, for any information that would identify Epstein's victims. And I want to explain to you, or read to you rather, from their 4-page motion about why they say the release of these grand jury transcripts is justified. At the end, Mr. Blanche writes, public officials, lawmakers, pundits, and ordinary citizens remain deeply interested and concerned about the Epstein matter. Indeed, other jurists have released grand jury transcripts after concluding that Epstein's case qualifies as a matter of public concern. And there he is referring to grand jury transcripts from a Florida prosecution relating to Jeffrey Epstein. He says, after all, Jeffrey Epstein is, quote, the most infamous pedophile in American history, end quote, again, quoting to that Florida state court order revealing grand jury transcripts from a Florida state investigation. The facts surrounding Epstein's case, quote, tell a tale of national disgrace. The grand jury records are thus critical pieces of an important moment in our nation's history. The time for the public to guess what they contain should end. And then he says the privacy interests on the other side, and those are things that people like me, Paul Butler, and other lawyers, former lawyers on our network have been talking about throughout the day, predicting that a court would not grant this motion. He says the privacy interests at stake on the other side of the balance are substantially diminished due to Epstein's death. Of course, as noted above, the Department of Justice will work with the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York to redact all victim identifying information prior to any release. And let me just flag for you and our viewers, Nicole, one other thing. Not only is Todd Blanche the only signature on this, but it is exceedingly rare, particularly in the Southern District of New York, to see Main Justice make a filing. That happens usually only when somebody at the Southern District themselves doesn't want to make a filing. I have seen that happen on a handful of occasions, all involving litigation, where Donald Trump is an actor in those proceedings over the last several years. One instance that I can think about, for example, is Emil Bovee filing the motion to dismiss the Eric Adams indictment. Why? Because no one in the Southern District wanted to do that. They all thought it was a righteous case. And here again, you see this motion being filed by Pam Bondi, signed by Todd Blanche, and yet nobody else, asking Judge Richard Berman, who is the SDNY judge who oversaw the Epstein indictment, to release all grand jury transcripts with appropriate redactions to protect the privacy of Epstein's victims.
Harry, let me bring you in on this. Lisa, stick around. Harry, does it make it more or less strange that Maureen Comey, who brought the Epstein case, was fired 48 hours ago?
The whole thing is beyond strange, and I guess it makes it less in the sense that they're trying now to, as they did in the Adams case, to push her out of the way. But look, this is a complete smokescreen, and for two reasons. Lisa talked about a case in Florida. That's under Florida state law that has a matter of public concern. Federal law contains no such exception. Rule 6E is very clear about what provisions can justify the release of grand jury material, and quelling a political firestorm just ain't one of them. More importantly, and the big point that makes this such a diversionary tactic, what they were proving and why these grand jury materials were assembled were charges against Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. And if you read the indictments there, they talk about Epstein, they talk about his associates, they talk about the underage girls. Basically, there's nothing about any customers. All the applicable law required is there be one commercial sex act, so they can absolutely uncover everything, which, by the way, is right now undercover for appropriate prosecutorial reasons because they may need to retry her. and it will have nothing to do with the victims with any of the customers in this case, nothing to do with Donald Trump. That is all back as part of the mother lode in Maine justice. So this is a absolute red herring, and Trump knows it is.